Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. The assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse is only part of a much larger story. So the beginning of this story actually goes back to 2018. So back then and ongoing until the present, you have had sustained protests against his rule. It has to do with the fact, and I am really oversimplifying a lot here, but it had to do with the fact that back around that time in 2018, and I think actually in 2015 or 2016, they had elections or tried to have elections, but didn't really work. So there was this kind of new legislative assembly council thing to try and organize elections. It ultimately failed, and so President Jovenel Moïse was actually ruling by decree, and that's part of why there was so much sustained protest against him. And notably, what a lot of these protesters were calling for was for him to resign, for many other lawmakers to go, and for citizens to create a sort of transitional council to begin and draft a new fair constitution drafted by the people of Haiti that would address corruption and also try and introduce social programs and sort of rebuild Haiti from the ground up, as it were. Needless to say, so far this hasn't happened, but that is the ultimate goal. Now, ongoing amidst these various, protests, you also have, again, utter economic hardship. This also led to gang activity that the government has absolutely failed to address. Haitians have had to flee to churches in order to try and find peace from, abductions and kidnappings so that they can ransom away people. And again, not a lot of people in Haiti have money. It's just a really big problem. And notably, one of the gang leaders, whose street name is Barbecue, has stated that the president needs to go and that the average Haitian citizen needs to be in control. Now, he's a gang leader, so probably he just wants a significant power boost for himself, but it is a sign that plenty of Haitians actually want an improved situation, and they didn't like President Moïse governing by decree. And this brings us to this past winter. As some people here or elsewhere on the internet may follow positive leftist news, they reported on something that I shared with them back in February about how Haiti had a 48-hour general strike that absolutely crippled the economy. Now, of course, a lot of the protesters faced immediate backlash from police and various other authorities, but it was a sign that Haitians were not playing around. So in the wake of the general strike, various other politicians said, okay, geez, we really can't handle any kind of economic crippling. We're already struggling enough as it is. Okay, fine, you win. New elections, we're going to set a time for them. But then COVID hit. So that's the other thing that's really ravaging Haiti right now is rising COVID numbers and an inability to fully deal with them. So between the protests and gang violence and a public health crisis, it's really not a good time to be in Haiti. But there was at least the spark of hope about actually having new elections and a referendum on a new constitution. But Jovenel Moïse kind of stood in the way of that because he still wants to be governing by decree. He's already tried to pass several laws or statutes that would make him basically Haiti's dictator. So in that sense, his assassination is not a bad thing per se, but it's not like it actually helps the current situation. It is a massive gray area right now about what happens next in Haiti. But what is worth remembering is that they had slated back in June a referendum that was postponed ostensibly for health reasons, but many suspect it was just for Moïse's political reasons. So if there's anything to take away from this, it's the fact that maybe there's just a tiny little spark of hope and optimism in Haiti right now as the vote for a referendum could move forward and hopefully Haitians start to see an improvement in their lives because Lord knows they could use it. But since the protests and several other parties involved are calling for a kind of grassroots movement and referendum and revolution of sorts, that's probably not going to enter into the media coverage of the current situation, which is why I wanted to take it upon myself to remind people of what's been going on, to provide context to what's happened, and also to give them an idea of how hopefully this could end up being a good thing moving forward, and the people of Haiti go on to see better health and better days and the introduction of social programs and a more fair, just, and equitable nation for all Haitians. But unfortunately, that is the part of this larger story that you are not going to hear from the media. The media is going to talk about the assassination and what that means for Haiti in terms of political upheaval and even more gang warfare and terrible things like that. I wanted to try and bring at least a little bit of optimism to this, but the fact that the media won't do the same because that might give the rest of us ideas is definitely what's bothering me today.